Sean Capri. Welcome to a very special Patreon bonus episode number 114 of We the GamerCast. It comes to you mostly on Mondays, but this is a very special powered by Patreon episode. We're doing 2 of these per month. Recurring guests. They're coming back. They're your favorite people. They're my favorite people. They've been on the show before. We're going to go a little bit deeper with my friend Zac Erickson very soon. Fellow Canadian, fellow Edmontonian. We're in the same freaking town. It's amazing. So thank you guys for everything that you do at patreon.com/makeusbetter. That's the reason that this is happening. Otherwise, we would just be waiting until Monday for another episode. But I know that you guys wanted more people to come back. I wanted people to come back. I thought this was kind of a nice way to do it. So Patreon, this is a reward when we hit that milestone. So thank you guys. Another reward, by the way, is this is up on youtube.com/WeTheNerdy. So you can check this episode out there. I would be remiss if I didn't thank our amazing producers, especially our platinum executive producer, Mr. Corey Hicks, our gold executive producer, Sheldon Benedict, and our gentleman executive producers, Nick Militia, Joel Brooks, James Johnson, Dr. Doom, Glauco Schaefer, Jesse Armstrong, Joey Hare, David Ray, Mike Drummy, and Brendan Myers. My goodness, Brendan, can I just give you a special, let's have a special moment, everybody, for King of the Pirates. The O is a 0. I'm so sorry, man. I will do whatever it takes to fix what I have done wrong yet again. I have not been mentioning you, and I am so sorry. Moment of silence for all the times that I was silent and not mentioning your name. Guys, if you're new, I here's the deal. Every week I have sweet hangs with a stranger. Usually it's a stranger from the internet. This time I know Zach very well. But if you want to be part of the show, it's easy. Tweet at me at Sean Capri. Sean like Connery, Capri like the pants. I think we're going to get right into it. This is such an excellent example of the spectrum that we are able to explore here on We the GamerCast. We talk about Sonic, Mario, mental health, and what does it mean to be game of the year. So stick around, guys. We're gonna be right back. Stick around. We'll be right back. Let's introduce that. Oh, by the way, it's not Jason. You're gonna want to stick around to the end. Jason takes a break from these Patreon episodes. You're gonna want to see. I'm pretty. I don't know what I'm more excited about, this chat or for the thing that's happening. It's pretty amazing, and it's a callback, guys. So here we go. Zac Erickson, you can follow him on Twitter at Zac Erickson or Nintendo Dads at Nintendo Dads. So here he is, Zac Erickson.
It's like playing a kid's game.
Can I ask why they would, like, do they not know what else is happening right now in the platforming world and like the Mario, maybe what Sonic may be thinking about right about now?
I know, yeah. It's just like, I don't know. Like, I think that the Sonic team specifically has like a real specific idea of what the Sonic games should be and like who their target audience is, and it's also the kids who watch the cartoon.
Yeah.
Like,
that's true.
They like have all the they have like all the cutscenes and stuff like that are it's very clear that it's like it's for the kids that watch the TV show and stuff like that. It's not for the like hardcore Sonic fans. So
what a concept that would be, to put out a game for the hardcore fans. That would be, well, I guess they sort of already did. Maybe fans already. I guess that's what
Sonic Mania was, right?
Yeah, like, is that the best order, do you think, that they went ahead and did it like that? Or is it like disappoint, like lower the expectations even further with this? Like, maybe this would have been better to come out first.
Yeah, like I think really there's still like there's a group of like old school Sonic fans that like this game totally is not going to do anything for those people.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's not like even the 2D Sonic areas they're like they control so the controls are so different from Sonic Mania. Like, it doesn't even feel like the same game hardly.
Is that kind of what you were expecting going in though? Like, is this? I mean, you guys having trouble getting anybody to play it, so that you can comment on it.
We've kind of made it the butt of a few jokes already. So yeah.
Well, so that's that kind of. How much do you put into it before you kind of place a final verdict on that game?
Yeah. See, with a lot of those things, it's like because we're just kind of like hobby whatever, right? So like I think that sometimes we've been guilty of throwing the word review around maybe a little bit too loosely compared
right.
But hope I will probably get to the end credits. It actually doesn't seem like it's going to be that long of a game anyways.
Yeah.
So but I don't anticipate like 100%ing this game. And frankly, like for ours too, like I'm just as interested to hear. My son will probably beat it before I do. That's just kind of.
Oh, really? Well, that's nice that he gets to try it.
Yeah, and I think that it'll be really interesting to hear his take on it too. Like he's not a very, he's 7, so it's like he's just
kind of entering that age, man, where like he can be a little maybe discerning, maybe a little bit with some guidance from the Nintendo dad.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just like what, and I can ask him questions like what was fun about this game, and he's better at kind of figuring out why he likes a game.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be great if we could kind of like tell adults on the internet to like maybe think about what makes a game good or bad? Like, because I actually think that's a difficult question for a lot of people to answer, or even to describe games. And we've been doing this a little while now. But I even still find myself going like, to describe why a game is good or bad, or even to describe an experience with it, is actually a pretty difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
But kids make it look really hard too.
I've actually really been struggling with that recently with Mario Odyssey.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's something about it that like, and admittedly I like rushed right through to the end.
Yeah.
Right. But like I did enough moons in each kingdom to kind of move on.
Yeah.
But after I saw the end credits, I was like, and there's like I won't spoil anything, but I got to sort of post game and I was like, oh. Initially I was like, wow, this is like, I can't believe this is what they did with this, and this is amazing, and like look at this is just like what wonderful fan service, all of that. Yeah. And then immediately I'm like, but wait, that's it?
Oh no, that's the opposite of what I've heard.
Right, where I was like, oh, okay, well, like what do I do? Oh, okay, that's what I do.
Oh no.
I'm in this situation, like this is another hard thing with reviews for me too, where I'm just like, okay, well, like, is this just not the kind of game that I like? Am I having this realization that I just don't like 3D platformers?
Dude, yes. I know exactly this crisis that you've been talking about. Yes, absolutely.
Is that like, I don't know, like I'm comparing this, like people are comparing this game to Breath of the Wild all over the place, and I'm like, no, I'm sorry, but Breath of the Wild blows this game out of the water, right?
Wait a minute. Can I call you out on something?
Yeah.
Because I mean, maybe this is what you were alluding to before,
yeah.
But I don't know if you realize this, but the Nintendo dads gave Mario Odyssey an 11 out of 10.
Don't even get me started on that. There was no that did not pass committee. That
Okay, let's talk about it. How did this happen? Like,
honestly, what happened? We actually haven't even had a conversation about it, and I'm not really that worried about it.
You're ruining Dave Moore's experience with the game with that 11 out of 10.
Justin Masson, which I'm sure you're listening, when you were assigning a score, with great power comes great responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, no. So
11 out of 10.
Well, what happened was if like he didn't even give the game a score in the review,
right?
And then later he was like, "Oh, I forgot to." I don't know if he forgot. We've never had this conversation, so I have no idea. But from my side, I kind of noticed like, "Oh, he never gave it a score," and then later tweeted out that image, and I just saw that and I was like, "Who the hell do you think you are, Masson? 11 out of 10, like." Is this a joke to you?
He's getting a little loosey-goosey over there in Ireland. Like, what does he take seriously anymore? He hangs out with Gary Gray and Paul Lloyd and all these people, and now nothing matters.
Like, just like basic new number convention is just out the window. I don't know. So,
would you ever? So, do games ever like approach a 10 for you? Like, was Zelda a 10? Because I'm pretty liberal with 10s, to be honest with you.
Yeah, see, like I spent a lot of time in like graduate school and like very, like in that academic sort of world where like I was doing research and like in such an environment of like picking things apart, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like whenever I'm in a discussion with somebody and somebody suggests an idea, my initial reaction is I got to poke holes in this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if this is going to hold up, I'm going to poke holes in it. And so I'm constantly, I don't know if it's my brain has just now been trained to look for things that are not the way that they should be. You know what I mean? Something like that. So I actually say that it would be really hard for me to give a 10. Zelda, I would say, is a heck of a lot closer than Mario Odyssey is, though.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like I would say, I think I officially said like it was a 9 for Mario Odyssey. Maybe that was a little low, like maybe a 9.5.
You took the words out of my mouth. Like, and the funny thing is, you say 9 and people are gonna go, "That's blasphemous! 9, there's no way. That's way too low."
Yeah, but then I turn around and I give like Fire Emblem Warriors, which we got a review copy for that, and I gave that a 9, and I'm like, but that I don't know. I'm not a reviewer. I don't have editors, and like if you work for IGN,
Mm-hmm.
they've got editors, they've got or like Nintendo World Report, it's like they write the review and then they have like several people go through it and say, oh, well, this is the score you gave and this is all the stuff you said about it.
Yeah.
These don't line up, right? And so like I don't know. I'm just when I give a number, it's like a gut check more than anything, right?
I try to have that conversation with myself too, of like when it comes down to it, and like at the very little inside baseball. I don't know how you guys, because I write reviews like 1,100 words at a time in some cases, but I start with the pros and cons because I used to do the opposite. I used to just write the review and then at the end I'm like, okay, how am I going to like boil this down? And then I realized I haven't actually mentioned any pros or cons. Like I just sort of like taught, so it ends up being a bit of a waste of time because I didn't say anything. So now I start with pros and cons and then I make sure that I flesh out the review around that. And then as I go through there, that's when I kind of go, I start with their number in mind. I jot down the pros and the cons and I flesh it out and I'm like, first of all, is the narrative that I'm telling true to how I feel about the game, yes or no? And if it's not, then I try to tweak it from there. But then once I come to the narrative being kind of what I feel about the game, then I go, is this close or far off from the number I had originally had in mind? And then I kind of do an adjustment from there. But and that kind of allows actually a bit of that allows me to be liberal with 10s, I think, because if I'm like just raving about a game and if it's a game that I'm waking up at 5 a.m. for like 3 weeks in a row, like Forza Horizon 3, then I'd start to think like, yes, of course I could say, well, the grass on the east side of the map doesn't look quite right, or just really start to nitpick it. But I don't know, man. I feel like in some cases it's just a matter of, is this the ultimate translation of the vision that the developers had to the actual game? And in some cases I think that is more achievable than we maybe even give credit for. I think Mario may be one of those. I think if you were to justify Mario as a 10, it's like, did they sacrifice or compromise anything? Like, this is the Mario game they wanted to make, and maybe even more than what they had in mind.
Yeah, I think the flip side of that too, though, is like, just because that's what they wanted to make, like, is that the ideal experience? You know what I mean? Like
totally. That makes sense too.
They reached, like, the reason that I said a 9 and not a 10 was because, like, you take the concept of everything and, what is the potential behind that concept and the gameplay and all of that sort of stuff, and did they reach the potential of where they could have hit? And that's where I'm like, you know what? Some of these kingdoms, like, I don't know how far you've gotten in Mario Odyssey.
Well, it only arrived like 2 days ago because Amazon.
Dude, I've given up on Amazon.
So frustrating. Oh, that's it. Well, this was a birthday present, so I can't complain too much.
Okay. Yeah. Well, a little bit you still can, but it's fine.
I mean, I was furious, obviously. But that's a good point. It has to translate into an enjoyable game for you. An example of that is Project Cars. Like, I think that was exactly what that team wanted to make. Project Cars 2, I thought it was a brutal time. I didn't enjoy it at all. They didn't make it a fun experience for me. It actually looked like they tried to make it as impossible to play, and not in that cool kind of Dark Souls-y kind of way. Yeah. It was just like, oh, you push the gas too much, you're spinning out of control. Like, I was just starting. Like, I was like, the lights just turned green and I'm spinning out. That's pretty brutal. Yeah.
So like with Mario Odyssey, like not reaching the potential, like taking just the very first kingdom of the whole game, right? That cap kingdom, and you like kind of see it, and it's got this sort of Tim Burton-esque, like,
totally
style, right? And I'm like, oh, this is cool, but it's like this very small confined area, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I know that you come back to these kingdoms, so I must be missing some, like maybe there's another little island that's going to pop up that I go to or something, and nope, all the moons are hidden in that little area. And I was like, that's like, okay, that's where I'm like, that the concept that was there, like you just didn't flesh it out enough, like it's pretty small. So
that's stuff. Everything I heard about this game is that it's been ready for a while, so it's kind of like they just been sort of sitting on it, or maybe just a little bit of polish. I wonder what that. It would be so nice to just be a fly on the wall who understood Japanese, and a Japanese fly.
Japanese fly. Yeah. But he's like, but yeah, like it's.
I think they turn into ocean monsters that crawl up out of the sea and destroy buildings.
Like a kaiju made out of. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Baxter Stockman, the kaiju.
Yes, I love it. But man. I mean, well, and that's the thing though, is that I think, like, every time I talk about this game, I feel like while I was playing it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, right up until the end credits, and then I was just like, wait, I want more. Like, what are you doing? Like, show me more cool stuff. Don't send me back to where I was. I've already seen that stuff. Like, you hid little things everywhere, but I want to see more art. I want to see more of these worlds. I want to see, flesh that out more. And it was just like, but it's still an amazing game.
Maybe I should have taken that as a sign, because I feel like people were wrapping that game within the first weekend. Like, has that ever really happened before in a 3D Mario game? Like, 64 is an enormous game, 120 stars. Even this, I guess people weren't necessarily 100%ing it, I guess is the difference. Like, you can mainline it. And my experience with it is, I've been really wanting to fully explore every single world, and I'm like, I'm going to get more moons than I need. Then the time comes where I get exactly the number of moons that I'm required to move on to the next stage. I'm like, maybe I'll just move on. So I have to be very mindful of that, because I don't know if that's, like, I'm getting that ADD a little bit of like, oh, something else. Oh, I'll go get something else. And being kind of like attracted that way through the game. So I'm not sure what that's going to translate into in the end for me.
Not only that too, but like sometimes it feels like there's so many that it's just, oh my gosh, like, do I really want to go and find another 20 moons in this kingdom right now, or do I want to see the next one that's really cool? And then it's like it's almost like there's so many of them, and so many of them are like, you rounded the corner and looked up and, oh look, there's a moon, and that's how you find a lot of them too, where it was just, that wasn't fulfilling. I just so
it's like borderline, maybe a little bit more advanced than, or involved than the Korok seeds, like where they're just kind of like, you'll just kind of stumble upon them, but like some of them are interesting. And I basically, I guess what I've been doing so far isn't necessarily that I've hit the minimum number of moons that I need. It's mostly that I've stopped kind of like finding them by naturally exploring the environment the way that I want to. Like, some things are really cool, like you turn into the zipper and then you unzip this thing and the portion on the wall, and you can find something in behind there. That's awesome. Like, that kind of stuff is great. But the last thing I want to be doing is actually like scouring this land looking for something that just looks a little bit off, so that I go kind of discover that way.
Yeah. But yeah, exactly. And again, like, it's kind of like a mix between like the Korok seeds and like the shrines too, right? Like in Zelda, where it's like some of those shrines are amazing, some of them you literally walked in and you were done, because of, a lot of times that was because of like some things in the overworld that it was a quest just to find the place, right? Is
there anything like what it was in 64, where you went into the painting and it was like, you have to do this to get this, the star, or the moon in this case? Like, is that, I don't think that I've experienced anything quite like that just yet. Like, it does seem very emergent, and you walk in. I guess maybe there's the like the one where you can turn into the telescope or whatever, and then it points you in the direction. I guess that's about as objective based as it gets.
Yeah, there's like some story beats ones.
Yeah.
There's a really funny one or a really fun one in New Donk City that is just like, it's like a scene out of Jurassic Park, which is just hilarious, where you just like go in and it's just like 2 seconds, and it's like things like that where it's just like random things where like, oh geez, what, like this is, and you have those little scenarios and moments like that.
But
yeah, I think the thing that I'm thinking too is like, comparing 64 to Odyssey, 64 goes quantity over quality sometimes, whereas 60 or in Odyssey it does that.
Yeah.
With 64, it was like 120 stars, and all of those stars are rock solid. Like a lot of them are really, really fun to get.
Yeah, so, man. Even collecting the red coins is fun. It's like, I don't know. Yeah. There's always a little something. Zach, I want to make sure that we stick to about an hour, so we've got a lot to talk about here. I mentioned ADD before. I'm going to get to that in a second.
Yeah, sure.
How's Nintendo Dad's going?
Good.
Yeah.
It's been going really good. We've been having a lot of fun.
Justin abandoned you though.
He did. He has to follow his heart.
For the advancement of his family and career and ambitions.
You gotta let the bird leave the nest.
I guess so. You should.
That's right there. Yeah, no, he's over there in Ireland now doing his thing for work, and he's over there for a while. I don't want to speak for him, but for at least another, I don't know, year or two or something. I don't know, something like that. I don't know. Maybe when all that's done, he's just going to decide that he just really loves drinking all the time, and he's never. Okay, I have to tell a funny story about this, and he's probably going to hate that I did this, but in our Discord chat, we have different things, and one of them is like in the different rooms, and one of them is After Dark, which is like if you're gonna have nonsense, go in that one, right, and say whatever. And he posts this picture, and he's in France right now with his family, and they went to Disneyland Paris, and it's just a picture of him with some sort of adult beverage, and he's like, "You guys, this is a family-friendly hotel resort, and I have had one too many, and it's just bad. I feel really good, but also don't judge me right now." It was really funny.
What do you want from me? I mean, he's probably getting the whole he's probably getting very European, and he's like, whatever. Like, what do you want from me?
I got the sense that he was like, I don't know why I'm sharing this with you. Back off. Don't judge me. Also, I'm having a really good time.
Oh my God, that sounds incredible. I wonder what data travel like does he have to worry about roaming over there? Is it just like you're in the Union?
I think if you're in the Union, then whatever. I think it's all the same. I don't know. Maybe.
Man, I love that. I remember friends in university would do co-ops over in Europe, and it was just like this. Man, like you and I will talk about, we'll go to like Slave Lake, or we'll go to Pigeon Lake, or we'll go to like just hang out in Red Deer, or maybe I'll go to Calgary or something. Like it's not a big deal, right? These 3-hour trips, and you talk to people like he's in Ireland. He just went to go visit France. Like this is so exotic, and it's like probably not. I mean, he's still sort of like stranded in the middle of the ocean. He still has to make a bit of a flight, I guess, but it's just all connected.
Like the most exotic place, the closest place would be what, like Vancouver, and it's like I don't even know. Like from where I was before in Lethbridge, it was like a 12-hour drive or something.
So
it's like 14, 16-hour drive from here, right?
Yeah,
like
it's a rite of passage for a lot of Edmontonians, I think.
Oh, okay.
It's like if you can do it all on your own, then like, man, you're something else, and that's so stupid because it's not a good experience at all.
It's like you get to Vancouver and it's just like, it's just Vancouver.
Like, do you feel that way? I feel like Vancouver is like world class.
I haven't been there. I passed through there on my way to Seattle once.
Oh, I'm so jealous. I want to go to Seattle so bad.
Like my buddy got married to a girl in Portland, and so we went like to Portland, and then on the way home we went to Seattle, did the Space Needle, and then we did Vancouver, and then we came home. So
I like how you say you did the Space Needle, like I don't know, like you went up the elevator kind of thing.
That's literally what we did.
Yeah, I'm just would like to imagine you climbing like the outside of it, like Link or Mario, just like, or even Donkey Kong, just climbing up the outside. But no, I just rode the elevator up a little bit.
Did the glass floor thing,
that would be amazing.
Yeah, that was cool. And then we came home. Like it was both cool and also really uneventful.
Well, it's a long trip, man.
And it's like, we were on our way home. We kind of passed through, and we were like, hey, we're passing through Seattle anyways. Let's take a couple hours to see the Space Needle, and then we'll go the other way.
And you drove right by Nintendo headquarters.
That was before I knew, man. Like this was 2007, so like. I was not really. I was in this sort of like I'm not too much into gaming at the time. I just kind of had, it was one of those lapse periods, you know what I mean?
Yeah, man, totally. 2007. So I mean, Wii is having. It's probably not a horrible time. It's called the Wii. Like you're probably kind of thinking, what do I want this thing?
Yeah, and I had just gotten home from like 2 years in the Philippines, actually. So
so you were one with nature and like you were disconnected.
Yeah, I was unplugged and like, you know, that kind of thing. And
I didn't know you did that. Why were you there?
Yeah, so that was at the time it was a mission for my church, actually. So a lot of, you know, teaching people the good word sort of thing.
Yeah.
But also a lot of service and the area that I was in was very poor. Like of all the different areas, it was in like the central. For people who understand the geography of the Philippines, it was in Samar and Leyte in the Philippines. And so like per capita, it's super like the poorest area of the whole country almost. So
yeah,
lots of hanging out with people in bamboo huts and stuff, which is pretty cool.
What were you hanging out in?
Oh, just like little houses, apartment. Like there were parts of town that were, you know, more like cinder block houses and stuff like that. And that's where we lived. But it was interesting. But like, you know, 2 blocks away is like squatters land, where it's literally like anybody who is too poor to have a home goes and builds a little bamboo hut, and that's where you live.
Oh my god! So what's weather like though? Like that doesn't withstand. That's not really up to code, Zach.
Oh no, of course not. Some of the squatters land, man, was like, depending on the area, it was squatters land for a reason, right?
Oh
like nobody wants this land because when the tide comes in, you know, the water comes in and it's literally like all of the freaking garbage and stink washes up into where you live and then washes out. And so you've got like, you're going through these places and they've got little, I'm thinking the Filipino word because that's all I, but like little, you know, sort of like walkways and things that are built elevated above the sort of mud that would kind of come in and out. So, you know, the thing about over there though is like you really get an appreciation for, wow, like what, like, you know, like it's one thing to say first world problems. It's another thing to be like, no, really first world problems. Like it's like these people find they have an ability to find joy in a day where they literally have nothing, you know, like, and they literally go out and they, you know, make enough money. I knew lots of people who they'd go out and they'd make enough money that morning by, you know, riding their little, like, I knew a guy who had a bicycle with a side cart, like a pedal bike, and he would go out in the morning at like 6 a.m. and he would, people would pay him to take them different places, right? Like a sort of like foot taxi. Yeah. And he'd make enough money that morning to buy lunch for his family. And then he would go out and he'd get enough money to buy dinner for his family. And then he would go out, get enough money to buy breakfast for his family the next day. And that was his life. Right.
So it's like a whole new, like we talk about living paycheck to paycheck being like 2 weeks at a time. His paycheck to paycheck is like morning, lunch, and morning, noon, and night.
Yeah, totally. And so, and yet like we'd like go and visit him or whatever. And he's just like, oh yeah, like come over and we'll play guitar around the campfire. And, you know, like we're just like, man, this is like the simple life. You know what I mean? Like, it's pretty cool.
Did you bring any of that home with you? I mean, you've got behind you. I'm talking to you over the internet right now. You've got an incredible microphone, some spectacular headphones on, the posters in the background. So it's hard to say that like you completely bring that back. But like, how much of that do you bring back? Because you did mention like first world problems, and you have firsthand experience of like how little people can live with and be maybe even happier than we are here.
Yeah, I think it. Well, I think it's like being like it always for me now is kind of falling back, being able to fall back on like being grateful for what you do have, you know, and like, and even people who even, you know, where they literally you could ask them and they literally have nothing, but they're like, no, we've got my health, I've got my wonderful family, I've got community around me, all those sorts of things, and that was always. You know, like that was super important to them. And I think that part of that too is just that like over here, we do. It's not. I don't want to belittle our problems because in the setting that you're in, it feels just as real. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Yes, we have a lot of good, like wonderful things. Like you want to talk about like privilege, like like even within our own society, there's like male privilege and white privilege and whatever you want to get into. But like even just the idea that like I was born into a place where I learned English as a first language.
Yeah.
There are people in the world who would die to be able to learn English because of the opportunities that brings, right?
I think of that all the time. Like, what are the chances that we were born into the language, and among other things that you talked about as well, but like this is the language of technology. This is the language of, in many ways, of the future. Like everything else is, they have English version, like sort of like Englishified or anglicized versions of words that they sort of like bring into, like the word exists first now in English, I guess is what I'm saying, and then it kind of, you throw an accent on it and then it gets translated into other language. I think that's so interesting. I count my blessings when it comes to that stuff all the time. But you mentioned kind of the whole being grateful for what you have. Like in moments where I'm like, where I may be forgetting to be grateful for the things that I have, it's also compounded by the fact that like I could have it a lot worse. Like I really, when I'm feeling down and when I'm feeling kind of in a dark place, and it's actually, that feeling is actually made worse because I'm so aware of how great things are. Great wife, great kid, like beautiful home.
And like there's almost like an element of guilt that comes in. Like, man, why can't I get my shit together? Like, wonderful life. What's going on?
I know. Well, I've got this phone that should keep me on track. She should be able to remind me of everything I need to, but like that's not working, and now I'm frustrating at her. So like how, moving into your newfound profession, you've been training for this, you've been in school for this for a long time. Like how much does that experience in the Philippines that was for the church, like is that serendipitous that it worked out to be part of maybe an additional perspective to gain with your career path, or was it part of the plan the whole time, or like how does that all work out?
Well, like when I was growing up, I grew up in southern Alberta, and it's very like Mormons are everywhere, right? And I grew up in the Mormon church, and the expectation is, when you're 19 years old, that's what you do. Right. Mm-hmm. And so that was just that was like a rite of passage at the time, which was, and so like, I do think that it sort of was, it informed my character, like as I developed, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Formative years for sure.
Yeah. And just sort of that like helped me not be such a self-centered sort of person in that sense. But I've always, like, even before that, like, I was always like the friend therapist, right? Like I was my therapist, or my friend's therapist, sort of thing, right? People came to me with problems and stuff, and some friends I literally would spend like hours with them on the phone. Like I had one friend who told me later, like, oh well, because you were willing to talk to me about stuff, like I was thinking of taking my own life and I didn't, and thank you. And I was like, you're welcome. Like I didn't realize that, like, that wasn't my intent.
Yeah, man.
But kind of realizing, like, oh, just being a good person, like there is a lot of power in that, right? And a lot of value in just just listening to people and talking to people. Mm-hmm. And so I think recognizing that, and trying to figure out what the heck I'm going to do with my life. I had an interest in mental health and stuff like that, and so eventually I was like, you know what? No, this makes sense. Like, I can talk to people, and there's a lot of, if you talk to people in a very specific way and you guide them through certain processes and thought exercises and ask them certain kinds of questions, they can really come to understand themselves a lot better, and learn how to have compassion for themselves and live better lives. And so, so that's kind of, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, a little bit. Well, now it's taking me into a whole new direction. You talk about these thought exercises and talk about different types of paths that you can walk people down through. Was there something that through your training and through your schooling, and now congratulations on your new career.
Yeah.
Do you have a couple like go-to things of like, or is it totally different depending on the person? Like there's got to be a couple like tools in your toolkit that you kind of like to pull out and go like, yeah, this one's going to be good?
Well, it's interesting actually. The practice. By the way, so I'm a registered provisional psychologist right now in Alberta, and I started working at the practice is called Shift Psychological, and they actually have an office in Calgary too. Like they're kind of doing this cool thing where they're trying to change, like a big part of like sort of their mandate that they've set for themselves is to kind of change the stigma around mental illness, to kind of bring down some walls and demystify therapy, and make it way more accessible and relatable and all those kinds of things, which it's a huge draw for me. I was like, man, like that is exactly what I want to do. Like, it was really cool.
Yeah, man, because like even the website or the way that they present the brand is almost closer to like getting your hair done, or like a kind of a cool dentist office or something. Like it is closer to something that is cool than it is, ooh, it's the scary like couch, and I don't know, it just looked way more approachable, maybe a little bit more focused at a younger audience, I guess is probably the best way that I would describe it. Yeah, like
Andrea, the sort of the head of the company is very much like, I treat this like a personal trainer for your mental health.
Totally.
Like, and that's like very much how she approaches it. And as part of that too is that there's a very specific protocol that everybody kind of uses the same protocol when dealing with clients and with issues. And surprisingly, it works with a really wide variety of issues. Not everything, right? Like, we're pretty clear about like, listen, if you have schizophrenia, we're maybe not the right, it's just, we can't be good at everything, and we'd rather be really good at helping people with, things like anxiety and depression, and maybe couples. I've started getting into couples counseling and stuff like that, which is really fun. But doing those sorts of things for maybe people who are a little bit more high functioning, we're not dealing with schizophrenia or like really intense things. But then choosing to help maybe some more things where people are just trying to almost optimize a little bit more. Like, if you didn't get help, then you just have a really crappy life or something. You know what I mean?
A bit of a dark path. Like, yeah, you get down a bit of a spiral. So, like, on that note, like, so I like that we're starting to get to a better place in terms of, like, leveling it out and comparing mental health with, like, physical health. And I think that's maybe, I don't know necessarily how accurate that is, but if that's the way that we're going to remove the stigma, then sure. Consider it like dental health, and you go get your teeth cleaned every 6 months, or people go see a chiropractor every couple of weeks and things like that. How would you, I guess, sort of talk people through even just this like one-to-many type of interaction that we have right now with people who are listening, or I guess one to a few, which would be real.
Yeah.
When I hurt my knee, it's plain to see. I can't walk, like I get a bit of a limp. It's uncomfortable, and there's even two paths for that one. I could say like, I'm just gonna tough it out, like it's not that bad, and then things kind of get worse until I really need to get them checked out. Ultimately, I need to have that thing treated. We're bad at self-diagnosing ourselves when it comes to mental health. Like when we have, it's almost like it's normal, I think, especially in gaming too, of just like, I'm so frustrated with this game, I'm going to throw my control, like rage quitting is a thing, or like having those temper tantrums, or having a bit of anger issues. I'm kind of drawing a wide spectrum here, but how would you maybe help people, again, just self-diagnose a little bit, or help recognize that behaviors that you are engaging in maybe aren't the best? Maybe those are signs of something that you might want to optimize.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think kind of going back to your previous question too about like what sort of things do people go through, right? Or like what sort of things do I guide people through? The basic sort of rationale, I guess, or for lack of a better word, around a lot of the work that I do with people is identifying. So basically, the idea is that as we grow up and as we're getting into therapist realm, folks. So like, talk about your parents, right?
Okay.
Right, but as we're growing up, one of the things that's the most amazing things about the human brain is. And the reason why we are able to be as good at such a wide variety of things as we are, is because the brain actually doesn't stop developing until like you're 20 years old or something, right?
Right.
And so like especially really early on in life, your brain is still kind of figuring out the rules of the world around you, and if there are certain things that are going on around you within the first decade of life, I would say for sure, like especially the first 5 years of life, then you just start to learn things. For example, you may learn I'm not good enough, right? If you're not reinforced enough. And when I say I'm not good enough, like literally almost every single client that I've seen, that is something that they believe deep down inside.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's just something that everybody has, that belief deep down inside somewhere. Right. Whether it was I had this cool picture that I showed my mom, and my mom got mad because she was trying to make dinner, and man, I now suck. Right. Like I suck or something. Right.
Yeah.
So and it's not even necessarily a rational thought. It's more of I would even say it's more of a feeling than a belief or a thought. But we would call that I'm not good enough a limiting belief. Mm-hmm. And so from that limiting belief of I'm not good enough, having a limiting belief like that and experiencing that sucks, right? Mm-hmm. It does not feel good. And so from that we get a lot of times develop a dysfunctional need. And so that dysfunctional need, examples to compensate exactly. Mm-hmm. So right, like I don't like feeling like I'm not good enough. And so from that, I then say, oh, I have to be perfect. I have to be really, really good at everything, right? And then from that, well, you can just imagine how that manifests in your life all over the place, right? Yeah. I don't take criticism very well. Anytime my mom says anything to me, I roll my eyes and get defensive, and I ruminate about how I could have done better, or, I can't get anything done, or I can't get started on tasks because now it needs to be perfect. And that's really overwhelming to think that it needs to be perfect. And so I can't even get motivated to start, right? Like all of those things come from of I'm not good enough. And so basically the protocol that we do is we just I guide people through, identifying what are some of these limiting beliefs that you have about yourself. And then through this really interesting process it's a very specific kind of treatment that originally was developed for people with post-traumatic stress disorder. It is called eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Mm-hmm. So we do a lot of work and just sort of talk therapy as well, and exploring, sort of things that contributed to those thoughts and beliefs. We basically reprocess it and over time eliminate those actual beliefs. If you imagine like a tree, and those beliefs that I'm not good enough is the root of the tree. Over time we just get rid of that. You just no longer think that you're not good enough. You actually are able to believe, you know what? No, I am good enough. I'm okay that I am.
I have to admit, I got a little distracted by the possible pun there of a tree and the beliefs that are on there. It's my Chelsea. I'm gonna have to tell Chelsea about that one a little later.
I never even considered that, but that is amazing.
It's all the branches of the beliefs. Oh, I love it.
Well played. But yeah, so that's the sort of gist of it, right? And I think everybody has that about themselves, and I think you can get a lot into shame and sort of discouragement. For me, a huge thing as well, especially for dudes. We don't really talk about self-compassion very much, right? Like we don't talk about how to be nurturing and supportive to ourselves. We think we have to be macho and whatever. We're not very good about being vulnerable, right? And that basically just bottles it all up and makes it hard to deal with. So, and for me, I think that's, when we talk about like breaking the stigma, I think for me that a big part of it is, and I think that you actually do a great job with this show too. I've said it before, but like, that's part of it is like you having, some amazing conversations with people and being vulnerable and having those sort of conversations so that it's like, you know what? No, everybody deals with this, right? Like not everybody, but like there are so many people who deal with it, and so often people feel alone. Mm-hmm. And just to be able to say, no, you're not alone. Like there are so many other people, and to feel like you can be a part of something, a group of people where you're not by yourself, that can make all the difference in the world, right? There's a great guy who said, I don't remember what his name is, but he's amazing. I said loneliness is the only real disease, and so the idea being that you can get through anything as long as you have people by your side. Right?
I see. You definitely, I feel like that statement needs a bit of a subheader on that one, because I'm like, I get maybe you're right. Yeah.
No, I hear what you're saying though. Yeah, absolutely. But just the idea that like, no, you're like, if you have some other people with you, if you have support, then you can just about anything. So
how do you separate yourself from the patient that you're treating or the person that you're treating? Because I mean, you're gonna come in contact with so many people. They're gonna maybe be along a spectrum of exactly like you, very different from you, like, but maybe there are versions of yourself that you see in these people. Like, you know, I think about this all the time where I'm very lucky. I don't really have to take work home with me very often. Like, there's some days where there's a version of it where somebody or something about work will frustrate me, and I'll bring that home and just kind of ruminate on that and go like, why is this like this? Why, like, it's so frustrating. And this is, you know, you get down that like circular path. I can only imagine, you know, I have an office job. I don't like pull people from accidents. I don't deal with trauma or anything like that. I'm not in the medical field of any sort. This is some pretty heavy stuff that you deal with on a day-to-day. Like, what's the separation technique that you have? Like, how do you, is it video games?
Yeah, honestly, like, and I don't like, this might even be weird, but like, to me, it doesn't, it's heavy, but it's not
right.
Like it's like, I consider it a huge, like a privilege to be able to hold the space of somebody who, you know, who I've been carrying this load around by myself all this time. And, you know, to be that person who I'm like, you know what, hey, like, let's just hold this space together. And I'm going to just hear your story. I'm going to help you work through that. For me, it never, like, and again, I've heard already, like, I've only been working here for like, you know, 3 weeks now. I've heard some stories from people that are just like, holy cow, you know, like, it's terrible. But I think part of it too is that I try to be the person who is injecting some hope, right? I'm trying to be the source of hope for them. And over time, I am helping be a part of the solution. So I don't know. I do. There have been times where I see somebody, you know, and I have a conversation with them, and I'm like, you know what? That you are a good example of what not to do. You know, that is something that is it for me is just more of like a, wow, I can learn a lesson and sometimes it's also, wow, you were amazing. You were an inspiration to me. I'm going to try and be more like you in this area of my life. And you know, as much as people come to be helped and impacted by their therapist, it's impossible to not think that the therapist is going to in some way be changed by that relationship too. Right.
And so this is just the way that my brain works. And I hate to go from the super positive that you were just talking about. I'm going to jump right to the opposite end of the negative.
Go for it.
Because you have a very important responsibility. Like, it's the great power, great responsibility thing where, yes, you have the ability to, in many cases, and very likely the vast majority, help people. What happens when something doesn't go well? Like, you know, like, I don't know if that's something that you can even keep in your mind as it happens, but there has to be some sort of like risk mitigation that is part of. So you want to make sure that you are doing, obviously, putting your best ability forward to help this person, but not everybody can have a positive outcome, I guess, just like with many treatment options. So I don't know, like, how do you prepare for, like, how do you deal with that? Because I think that may be a paralyzing aspect for other people who may be interested in getting into this, but like, you kind of have to look at the entire spectrum of outcomes that can happen.
Yeah, and for me, I think for me, part of that, the answer to that question is for me to come back to, like, what is my role in this person's life, right? Like
in relation to all the other roles that everybody else is playing.
Yeah, like, I literally see this person for 1 hour a week, right? And much as I would love to be able to change this person's life and you know, to reach into their life and just like change it for the better, ultimately that's not my job. Like my job is to help them become the best version of themselves so that they can make that change. Right. And I really, like, it is absolutely disappointing when, you know, even thinking back to like my practicum stuff where it's like, we're having the same conversation every week here. Like, what's going on? Like, you're like
not doing the homework.
Yeah. We take it, we talk about this stuff and then you come back and then you know, you have the same thing coming back. And for me, it's like, okay, well, I do also at the same time don't want to just be like, well, you didn't do your job. I know I'm doing fine over here. Right.
Right.
Like
Totally.
You have to be really self-aware as a therapist too, to be like, okay, is this me or is this them? Or like the reality is that it's probably both. And it's not that I'm slacking off, but maybe the approach that I'm taking isn't really a good match for this person's personality. And so maybe I need to change things up that way.
It's a strange analog to the game developer making translating their vision to the game and then making that enjoyable or at least palatable for the player, or in your case, the patient. It's this weird kind of interaction that you have a vision of what you want, where you want to take them, or how you want to deliver the treatment, but whether or not that's something that the person's going to engage with is an interesting sort of analog, I think, to the way we started this conversation.
Yeah, totally. And where like how am I, like, I guess for me it comes back to that self-compassion, knowing that I'm not going to be perfect. I'm going to make mistakes too. But also that's just part of the deal, right? And one of the things that I tell every client that comes through is I am 100% open to feedback. If something I do bothers you and the only way to tell me that is to really hurt my feelings, please tell me.
Yeah.
Like, way rather know, and I'll go and pay for my own therapist if that's what it takes. But it's that important for me to be able to be open to that feedback and that criticism, because otherwise, like, what am I doing, right? And you've like, there's like a lot of, I mean, I'm a therapist, so that I obviously believe in it, and I,
right, of course,
when necessary, engage in that process myself too.
So on that note, how do you practice your own mental health? I try to think like, and this is, one should not be left to their own devices on this. I probably should like it sounds so cliche for like self-help books and things like that, but like there are probably exercises, like I guess I don't even know. So I'm asking, like, what are some things that maybe you do to practice good mental health?
Yeah, I think for me, there's a couple of things. One of them is finding some sense of, there's lots of different ways to do it, but I would say like a mindfulness practice or some sort of quieting your mind sort of thing. Having some way, in other words, to detach or unplug from the world. And for me, what this looks like for me is that I will often go for a walk, right? Like I'll just go for a walk, and it's not for any other reason that I'm putting music in that I feel is, and if you were to look at my iPod, man, it's like, it's super nerdy, but it's like 90% like for specifically for my walks, right? Like I have like 90% of it is like scores from superhero movies.
Awesome.
Right? And
awesome.
So like, and for me, like I feel like I get a lot of recharge from listening to like those, and again, I feel like it is more of a form of like meditation almost, right? Like, I just have like certain things where I'm like, you know what, the emotion that this moment in this movie triggered for me, like that's something that I want to have with me in my life all the time. And so I very regularly connect with that and do that just to kind of remind myself of like what is really important to me in my life, right? And connecting with that. And I've done this forever, like since I was in high school, but I've never really understood why I do it. And I think that's why, is because it reconnects me with what my values are and what I want to be doing with my life and things like that, to kind of keep that in.
Well, and I think
are you still there?
Yeah, I glitched out now I'm getting the real Nintendo Dad's experience of Skype, oh crap, and we're back. I think you mentioned something I don't even know if you meant to, but I think it was super important, is being able to recognize that, like, the positive feedback loop of, like, or the positive reinforcement. So when something good is happening, I want to do that, or when it's actually helping my mental health, do that again. Like, we usually get that with bad things. We get it with, like, okay, well, getting hammered is fun, so I'm going to keep doing that, but that's very harmful. Or like, this drug makes me feel this way, or even just drinking this coffee makes me feel energized, but it's actually harmful. It's actually much more difficult to recognize the positive things in our life that actually make it better, so that we do, like, why are our brains like that, Zach? Like, why don't we get that dopamine hit, or whatever the release is when that happens, and it becomes much more obvious to us that when I get sleep, I feel better, so I should sleep more.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that, I mean, you go back to caveman days in order to really understand that, right? Where the caveman that saw a rustle in the bushes and
so that's a really good point,
ran away, and he lived. And the one that looked and saw a rustle in the bushes and there was a lion there and he thought it was just the wind, he was lunch, right? And so the one
sleeping's been bad for a very long time.
Yeah, anxiety for a long time has been, like, in evolutionary history, anxiety has been very advantageous, right? We were bred to be anxious people. Like, that is, like, we selectively were bred for that.
Damn it.
So, right. But the thing is that once you kind of know that, and this kind of goes back to mindfulness too, is I guess a question for you too, Sean, like, what would life look like if you accepted the fact that you will probably feel those feelings somewhat for your entire life?
I think about that all the time.
Right? And so, like, how do you live your best possible life even though you'll probably feel that? And I think a good similarity, and when we studied things like depression and anxiety in therapist Hogwarts is what I like to call it.
Nice.
But,
yeah.
But
you got a new professor 2 years in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he died and they replaced him with a lookalike.
It was. Is that me or you? I don't know.
I don't know.
Anyway,
and
a
we're
good
back.
A good similar sort of analogy for it is people who have chronic pain, and
right.
The people who do really well with chronic pain, and really, it's not that pain never goes away. It's the relationship with that pain, right? Where it's like, well, okay, now I'm feeling pain. And the people who really struggle with that are people who are like, oh my gosh, this pain, it's been going on forever, and I hate having this pain, and the doctor said this and whatever, and now I can't go out with my friends and yada yada yada, and it snowballs into a much bigger issue. Whereas people who really learn how to deal with chronic pain are ones who are like, yep, still hurts, not letting it stop my life, right? And so that's where, and I mean, that can also sound like dismissive, but there's an element of resilience there, right? Where you're like, yeah, this doesn't feel very good, but also I know that I can ride that wave. It's not comfortable, it's not pleasant, but it is what it is. And I'm gonna get through it. And I have particular ways of getting, I know that I can lift my spirits by listening to music or going for a walk or playing a game or something. And
well, man, when you talk about riding the wave too, and I kind of, there's an element of endurance that is involved here of like, how many more of these pits can I fall into and climb up out of? And at a certain point, it's kind of like bench pressing, but you've got like twice as much weight as you need. And you're like, man, I've been training my butt off and I've been working at this, but I don't have a single push left in me. And maybe this is actually where it goes back to your loneliness sort of disease, is you need a spot in life. So that when you have those moments of like, I'm giving all, like, my arms are shaking, or I guess the metaphor is my brain is shaking, I don't have anything left, and I feel like I'm on my last legs. Like, you need something or somebody that like lifts the bar up off of your chest, because in the moment it feels like I got nothing. I got no more energy for the thing that I think is too big in life to overcome, and then if you get a good night's sleep, you wake up the next morning and go, well, what the hell was I so worried about? So there's a muscle that has to be trained so that when that does happen, you do have that one extra push, or that you have a support team, I guess, around you. Maybe that's what the role that you play as a therapist too.
Well, and I'm
personal
actually
trainer.
A little bit, yeah, but I'm actually going to disagree with you a little bit on that approach too, because I think that, you know, that one more push thing, Brene Brown, like if you don't know who Brene Brown is, go and check it. She's got some awesome books, but she's a researcher that studies a lot about vulnerability and living what she calls a wholehearted life. But she has an awesome book that just came out called Rising Strong, and it's all about how to deal with failure. And one of the best things that she talks about in that book is she uses the story of, you know, like somebody who's riding a bull. And you know, you're super excited and you get on the bull and you're going to ride the bull or whatever, and you get bucked off and you hit that ground hard. And we never talk about that moment between when they hit the ground and they get back up, right? And what is that moment where you're literally dazed on the ground, and you're just like totally, you know, taken out of it, and just like, you know, what are the thoughts that go through your head in that moment? And a lot of it is learning to sit with it and not rush that moment, right? And not to face the darkness, so to speak, right? Where it's just like, you know what, like, this is hard, and this is really hard, and I need to share that with other people, and not immediately jump to, you know, you hit the ground and immediately you're back up. Sometimes you're winded. Sometimes you are overwhelmed, and sometimes it just sucks and you've got to have a good cry. You know what I mean? And that was a really powerful lesson for me of just like, you know what, like, I love the movie Inside Out, and part of the lesson of that movie is like, no, sadness is really important. And when we are feeling sad, you know, it's like, well, why do we feel sad? And having that introspection of like, I do need to connect with other people more, like you were saying, and having those meaningful relationships. And of course, at that point, then yes, you get up, you make changes in your life, you work towards what's important to you, and focus on what are your values and what do you want out of life, and actively work on that. But that moment where you hit the ground is just like, especially men in our culture, right? It's just like, nope, you're macho, you get up now, right? Don't you cry. Like this is like how we treat our little boys, right? It's like, don't cry, you're tough, you're okay, get over it, let's go. And it's like, no, that is not, like, sometimes you just got to get there and get your breath again, right? And that's okay, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that, like, of course, the time does come where things are going to, you know, you learn lessons and you make changes, but it's because of what you're working towards. It's not because of like that experience that you never want to have again. That experience is always going to happen, right? You're always going to have difficulties in life. It's how we deal with them, I think, that is within our power, I guess. So
Zach, I think the most natural question that I can segue into is, what does it mean to be the game of the year?
The game of the year.
What does it mean to you? What does it mean? I gotta make sure that that we get a good night's sleep tonight, so that we can be good dads tomorrow. So we'll close this. I think that was absolutely. I joke, trying to shut that off a little bit. Amazing conversation. I'm so glad that we got a chance to talk about that. But I would be remiss, Zach, of course, too, if I didn't get a little look inside your brain. We talked about the at the beginning of the conversation about what makes a 10. What makes game of the year to you, man? And on Nintendo Dads, it's all in the realm of Nintendo. This is probably the most complex year you guys have had in a long time to talk about game of the year.
That top 10 is going to be a nightmare. Like last year, it was. Well, I don't even remember what last year was.
Exactly, that's a problem.
Animal Crossing, Amiibo Fest, was that only last year? Maybe.
Oh my gosh, no, God forbid.
Right, like it's going to be.
Star Fox Zero was number 3.
Yeah.
By default.
Honestly, for
or
me,
maybe Bravely default.
Yeah.
Bravely second.
Yeah, I don't know. So the question is, what is game of the year?
So I guess even before you answer that, so like, you're sitting there, you got your pen in hand, your notepad, and you're like, okay, I've got all these games that are great. But what makes one game kind of like leapfrog all the other ones to finally land? Because that's sort of like the way that it all kind of happens, is you get your list and you're like, no, this one's a little better than that one. Oh, no, that one's worse than this one. But what does it mean for that one special game to just kind of make its way to the front of the list? For you, I feel like this is a personal take on Game of the Year, because we all have very objective sounding responses to Game of the Year awards, like Overwatch last year, or the Video Game Awards. A lot of us sounded very objective in our opinions against that, but which is easy to do, is much harder to say, well, instead, this is actually what makes Game of the Year.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what our Game of the Year was. Last year, I think it was Pokemon Sun and Moon, I want to say.
I bet it was Pokemon Go.
It might have been. I think that was like number 2 or something like that. Like that was definitely one of them. Yeah, I think for me it's like it's Game of the Year. I think there's obviously the quality of the game itself, but also at least it feels like there's an element of like how important was this game? You know, like did this game make a dent in the overall, you know, ecosystem of gaming? And that definitely contributes to it as well for me. Like, no, this was a really important game for Nintendo. Like, again, we only ever do, although it's going to be weird because we've got other Nintendo games now that, or other games that are coming to Nintendo platforms. This is the first year where I'm like, oh, I don't know, like, is Doom on this list?
Yeah.
You know, like the top 10, you know, like stuff like that where I'm like, wait, Nintendo Dads is like put Doom on a list? Like, you know, I don't know. It's interesting to think about that. But yeah, I would say that that's definitely, like, how memorable was it? How fun was it?
Yeah.
Like there are some things that I'm like, I don't know if it necessarily should matter, but replayability for me, I think, matters too. Like, how much did I want to go back to it? Right. And that's an important factor too. Is like, did I get sucked into it or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
like,
no, I'm the same. I am exactly the same, and I actually think that it's funny that you almost went there. I'm not sure if you meant to. It's almost like there's a difference between your personal Game of the Year and if you were to brand a Game of the Year on behalf of, like, the Nintendo Dads, or if we were to do We the Nerdies Game of the Year. It's almost like it's a reflection on, like, I find like Game of the Year is like a reflection of me. Like last year, my Game of the Year was Forza Horizon 3 followed by Uncharted 4, but I wouldn't suggest that We the Nerdy make Game of the Year Forza Horizon 3. I voted for it just so that it would get, like, ranked up there, but that it's different. It's different depending on, like, who is it a reflection of. And I actually think from that perspective, the Video Game Awards, it actually makes a whole lot of sense for Overwatch to have been Game of the Year last year. Because it sort of reflects the prestige of, or whatever that aura that publication or that entity is trying to give off, I guess.
Yeah, and I think too, like, there's that. I'm just remembering I was going to say this when we were talking about reviews, but I always try when I'm doing a review of, like, if you liked X, then you'll love this game, right? Like, I try and have a statement kind of like that, just about in anything like that, because then you have context for the, like, this instantly is this kind of game, and you'll really like that if you like that, right? And so so I think that's, you have to understand the context of, you know, and if it is Game of the Year, it might as well be called Most Important Game of the Year or Most Impactful Game of the Year, for at least, right? Like where, and again, going back to Overwatch, right? Like for Blizzard Entertainment to come out with their first new IP in like 17 years, and to have it just blow everybody's socks off and be this.
Is that what that was?
Yeah.
Holy crap! I guess you're right. Quickly doing it.
Because Diablo, I think, was the last new IP before that. Right? They had Warcraft, Diablo, and Starcraft, and now they've got Overwatch and, I guess, Hearthstone and Heroes of the Storm.
Yeah, I wouldn't count it.
Those aren't new mashups, right? Or they're spinoffs. But yeah, so they for the entire history of Blizzard, they've only ever. If there's one other company than Nintendo, for me, it's Blizzard. Like Blizzard. Like, I just was watching a bunch of panels from BlizzCon over the weekend and stuff too. So I'm like, oh, the last thing I need is to freaking get back into WoW right now. Like that's how I'm feeling.
They were really ahead of the game. I remember looking at things like from BlizzCon, and I thought when I was playing Warcraft 2 that like that was it. Like Warcraft 2 is all we're ever gonna get. And Blizzard is like amazing for that, but you didn't really think of developers in that way when you're a kid. And then before you know it, BlizzCon is all these different IPs and different, like even Overwatch is gonna have a new map that's like Blizzard Land or whatever it's like, whatever it's called, and it's just all the different franchises reflected in like this Disneyland of an Overwatch level. It's so awesome, dude. Zach, let's close things out. Tell everybody where, as if they didn't already know, where can they find you on the internet, and what are you doing in the podcast land, and is there anything new that you can talk about? Or last time we talked, you had something on the go.
Yeah, so I guess as far as like, I mean, if you don't know what Nintendo Des is, we're a Nintendo show. We talk about Nintendo and parenting stuff, and so you can just look for us online. You'll find us. As well, I guess if you want to follow me personally on Twitter, it's at Zac Erickson. It's ZACERICKSON. If you are in the Edmonton area, and I mean, I'm a therapist now, so go to Shift Psych. That's like PSYCH.com. And you can set up an appointment over there. There's online booking and stuff too. So, but what's cool, I don't know if I said this earlier. You mentioned the podcast that I had been working on before the last time I was on. Since doing that's kind of gone on hiatus. The person that I was planning on doing that with, we both kind of were, we graduated and then trying to get started with work, and we kind of, that's on a hiatus. It may come back one day. Mm-hmm. However, working at Shift, what's really cool is that, again, because they treat their psych practice like a startup almost, and they're like super open-minded. And I was like, oh, well, I do podcasting. Like, you should do a podcast. And I was like, what? Like, you want to pay me to do a podcast? Like, is that what I'm hearing here?
Oh,
like, yeah.
Nice, man. Right.
So I'm working with them to develop a podcast, and again, around that sort of idea of, let's make psychology and mental health topics something that's approachable, and break down that stigma and pull back the curtain a little bit. And there's like for such a long time, the field of psychology and the field of psychotherapy has kind of had this air of, like an ivory tower almost, where it's just like, oh, it's this person who's just got all of this knowledge but is sitting back in the chair and whatever. Right? It's just like, no, like, we're like, break all that crap down. Like this, we want this to be approachable and understandable and dare I say fun to talk about. You know what I mean? Like, if you listen to Nintendo Dads, that I enjoy making podcasts entertaining, and I think that entertaining podcasts is something that's super important. So that's something that I'm hoping to bring to this new one as well. So follow me on Twitter, and if you're not, and I'm sure I'll probably mention it on Nintendo Dads too, once it's up and running. But like, I've just started. We're in concept stage like this week, and so
is the dream, man. Congratulations, that's awesome.
And so that it's actually through work and stuff. It's like, oh wait, no, like we've got to like. This is a business now, and so like this is part of advertising almost, right? And so it's just like, it's very much like produce a pilot episode or a concept episode and let's try it out, and then eventually get it all out there. But
support them on patreon.com/shift.
Yeah. I don't know how that's gonna, but it'll be fun. It'll be a good time. So we'll see.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for doing this. This has been awesome.
Yeah, dude. Absolutely. Thank you. You're doing a service, man. A service to, I don't know why I have this necklace that has like orange bones.
You look very like, I don't even know what the word is. Very natural.
It's like a fidget, like I have ADD, and so it's just a fidget for me. I don't know. But yeah, no, it's, you're doing a service here with some awesome stuff you're doing. And so keep doing what you're doing. And I think I commend you on your service and your goodness.
I will fake it until I make it, my friend. Thank you for the kind words.
Yeah, no worries, man.
Finally. By the way, I forgot to mention that November is Nintendo Dads month. We're gonna have 2 Nintendo Dads coming right back at you right here on youtube.com/WeTheNerdy, and it's thanks to everybody who helps out at patreon.com/MakeUsBetter. You're supporting this show, you're supporting Nintendo PlayStation Podcast, you're supporting If We Ran Nintendo, and you are truly making us better. This is a great example. I love having these guys back on the show, go a little further. You guys know me. I'm diving into this stuff a little bit more and more as the weeks go on. I will always call back to the episode of Lohr as one of those special episodes. There's been a couple. You know what? You've been doing this for 100 or so episodes. There's bound to be some gems in there, and I'm so grateful to have Zac as a friend and Zac to come on and talk so openly and honestly. And I feel like I had a great time talking with you, Zac. I don't know if anybody else had a great time listening. I hope so. And you know, we chatted a little bit afterwards. You can't just have that conversation and shut things down. We continued to chat a little bit, and we kind of talked a little bit about how much of myself to insert into that, because I guess I didn't even say this to Zac yesterday when I recorded this. I want this to be helpful for other people as well. I also want it to be entertaining, and I don't know. I want it to I guess it also depends on my energy too. I think that is what I was saying to Zac. But most of all, I want you guys to get something out of this as well. If you are dealing with stuff, if you just have your dark days or whatever, there's a whole spectrum to explore on that as well. But hopefully you get a little something out of that. And I really just enjoy having Zac on. Just to begin, like, I love his takes on Mario, so you get all the other stuff as a bonus. And this is a bonus episode. Thanks to everybody, patreon.com/MakeUsBetter. So thank you guys. If you haven't started supporting us, please consider it. If not, that's cool. These are coming at you anyways. There's nothing behind that paywall. There's nothing in there, in that Patreon locker room, that isn't happening. It's all a locker room, guys. We're all in this locker room together. What am I even talking about? Thank you to our artists, Gary Gray and Adam Leonard, and our video designer. This looks as good as it does. It's all thanks to Antonio Guillen. And of course, this podcast is powered by the DaceSpace network of podcasts, where you can find Nintendo Talk, Character Crunch, Planet Nintendo, If We Ran Nintendo, Topic Nintendo, Warp Whistle, Nintendo. I don't think that's there. Guys, this is episode 114 of We the GamerCast is now in your ears. Thanks for listening. I'll be back on Monday. Now it's time for Patrick Stewart at the drive-thru.
Hello, I'm Patrick Stewart, star of TV's Star Trek: The Next Generation, and the host of the documentary series MGM, When the Lion Roars.
Okay, that's fine, sir. Can I take your order?
Yes, you can.
And what is your order, sir?
I'll have a quarter pounder with cheese and a side order of fries.
Would you like...
And a fillet. Oh, fish.
Would you like a cold drink with that, sir?
Yes. Yes. For the sake of the future of all mankind, I will have a small Sprite.
Okay, sir, that's $5.20. Could you proceed to the first window?
The first window. The first portal to a new dimension. One greater, one more wondrous than our own.
No, just the first window of the drive-thru, please, sir.
Yes, then so it is that I proceed to this window of which you speak.
Thank you, sir.
Approaching warp speed.
What the f***? Mate, did you just drive into the back of me?
Yes, it is so.
Mate, are you some kind of f***ing comedian?
I am Patrick Stewart.
Mate, get out of the f***ing car.
And so, with heavy heart, I hereby withdraw from the vehicle.
Mate, look what you've done to my f***ing Duco.
You accuse me.
Mate, f***ing A I do. Here's your order, sir.
What manner of burger is this? And these slivers of potato extract?
Hey, Chrome Dome, are you going to f***ing pay for my car or not, mate?
I am under attack. I must reason with this.
Mate, you are talking out your f***ing ass.
And so it is that I bid you and your people farewell.
What a f***ing dead shit.